Um,
Hello and welcome to another powerful group SFT Tapping event. This is day 2 of the RNC National Convention. We are continuing our tapping series to dissipate all things MAGA and everything that is the antithesis of universal empowerment and joy, love, abundance, freedom, health, success. I'm Marvin Schneider.
Hi, and I'm Jen Ward. It's actually fortunate that we could be at the throes of dealing with an autocrat, because in spiritual realms, when something is personal to you, it's more effective to address it. So the fact that all of us are addressing an autocrat potential right now and dissipating assists us in taking down autocrats all over the world. So this is great.
Mm. Interesting. Yes, it is. And it's an interesting time in human history where, yes, you are right. We are right on the forefront of dissipating the potential of another autocrat. Not that we don't have enough in the world. We've already had our experience of the Nazi regime. We don't need it again. This tapping event today is entitled Preventing the Evil Dictates of Project 2025. So put it into context, we a couple of days ago did a tapping event on Project 2025. The whole Project 2025 thing is very topical. And the last tapping event was at a higher level. So just sort of hitting the broader issues around Project 2025 and its underpinnings. Today, we're going a level below that, and we are addressing the specific dictates, mandates, dictum, if you like, and the specific line items, if you like, the how rather than necessarily the why of the way that the Heritage Foundation and Donald uh, are attempting to hijack democracy and put in place an autocracy in probably the most powerful nation on earth.
Absolutely. I think I think if people are going to be empowered sovereign beings, it's good for them to know the process of how power works and watch how the manipulation happens very slowly as a trickle and just gets more resounding. So it's
Mm.
good. It's a good 101 for people who are waking up to see how not to be enthralled in power.
That's a good point that you make. It's a little bit like the boiling frog syndrome. You don't really know that the water is heating up and boiling because you're kind of in there, you're in the fray. But you're absolutely right. Now is a great little learning opportunity for all of humanity to witness in real time the way that power subjugates in a very subtle way, slowly over time. And then you look back one day and you go, oh my God, how did this happen? And I suspect that something like 60 million or thereabouts Germans back in the day had that experience, other than the smaller proportion of them that were right up the arse of the Nazi regime. But they went along, they didn't protest, they attended the rallies, it was all the hoopla, it was all good to go. And then all of a sudden it's, oh shit, how did this happen? And then a generation of Germans after the event need to deal with the aftermath of that in energy and in their personal lives. But yes, we have an opportunity to avoid that right here, right now.
Back in when Donald was president and he started making taking babies away from their parents, and he was starting internment camps. That's when my energy work amped up and stuff, and I worked really hard to to expose those internment camps, that he was starting back then. But there was a blonde that was working for him on this project, and then there's Stephen Miller and there's Steve Banning, which are really slimy, evil, dark energy. That's when I started seeing actual individuals in their Nazi uniforms from the past. Now, some of them were SS agents, some of them were Gestapo, and it's like really creepy. And this blonde, all I could see was her. Um, I think it was the darkest one. think it was the Gestapo, Nazi police, whatever. But I saw her in that uniform, and it's like really ugly. The energy isn't there because they're not using the energy of past presidents and past vice presidents and and gifting it over. That's the whole point energetically of the convention. You take the energy of the past leaders and you put it into the hopes and dreams of your future leaders. While Donald has besmirched everyone, he's burned so many bridges, he actually tried to kill his own vice president. So there's none of that. So that was really helpful to me. Is it's not a perpetuating of the whole Republican Party from all past eras coming through in this full force. It's just a new spark of white supremacy dressed up in Republican Party Nazi wannabes. Because at one point on the floor they started screaming, "Fight! Fight! 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 Fight!" It reminds me of Nazi Germany, where they're all sitting there. But the good part is they don't have the energy and the fervor of it. They've pissed it all out in so many ways.
So the other thing you said off camera, Jen, to me was that as you observe Donald, we're not going to call him Trump, we're just going to call him Donald because he is just the child. So he's just little boy Donald. So when Donald was entering the convention, you were saying it didn't feed him. The energy of the convention didn't feed him. So can you just talk to that? Because there is an important energetic explanation of what's going on there.
So what's interesting is, because these are the moments that you want to watch. You want to, especially if it's your party, you want to see the reciprocation. You want to see the love go back and forth, and you see that when Biden speaks. You know, he gives as much as he receives. Donald walked in and he looked defeated. He looked tired. He's sitting there and all this hoopla's going on, and I swear to God, it reminded me of when he was in court and couldn't keep his eyes open. And the only time he perked up is when they sang a song specifically to him and the spotlight was on him, and he perked up a little bit, because I realized with him, the only time he gets fed, the only time he has any joy at all is when all the attention is on him. The problem is now it takes more and more energy to feed him because, you know, a snack is not enough for him. He's got to have all this attention on him, or else he's just miserable.
All right. Today's tapping event is entitled "Preventing the Evil Dictates of Project 2025." Not everyone is going to be familiar with the real details and undercurrents of Project 2025, and that's understandable because it is a manifesto that is 920 pages in the writing. It's a big document, but contained within that document is a very detailed, very specific, action-oriented program of activity in which presumably the conservative president, at the moment, Trump, Donald, is to basically take over the proper functioning of what was usually considered a well-functioning democracy, such as it is in America. And so I wanted to give a little bit of context, Jen, around Project 2025, if that's okay, just to help the audience a little bit, put into context, because we are going to be dealing with the specific dictates, the mandates. And so I always find it useful to understand what the bigger picture is here. And so one of the first things that I try to do is understand what is the underlying intent here. And so the Project 2025 is funded and orchestrated by a pretty perverse organization called the Heritage Foundation. It is a manifesto that outlines a very comprehensive plan to reshape governance through a conservative lens. And so then I'm thinking, you know, so what is that? What is the overarching intent? And the overarching intent is to restore what they perceive to be traditional American values. And then I'm thinking, okay, so what is it about traditional American values that these dudes are so hell-bent on putting into place, and doing it in a way that basically undermines all of the checks and balances of a proper functioning democracy? It's pretty messed up.
So what's interesting as you're talking, and I'm not zoning out, but I'm listening from an overview of like I can't handle the details, and then I'm just like paying attention and energy to what you're saying, and I realize what you're doing here, Marvin. I don't think you realize what you're doing is what you're doing, and everyone who's listening may have some resistance and say, "Well, let's just get to the taps," right? But what you're doing for the collective is you're reforging pathways for them to discern for themselves because those have been burned out of them. The authors of this project 2025 are people who probably had a hand or ascribed to Mein Kampf in the past. That was Hitler's manifesto, and they wanted to come back and be prepared for their new regime in this present lifetime. So they wanted to be prepared to have that written. Now, the scary thing about 2025 is it is Donald's manifesto, but it's not. So even if another Republican stepped in, this J.D. Vance, he would be happy to like lay this out. He would probably take it even further because yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And it kind of gets back to what I was saying. So, Donald is just the symptom of a bigger issue. The bigger issue is real right-wing conservative agenda to restore what they consider to be core American values. And they're trying to do it in a way that, in their mind, core American values are not being served by the proper functioning of the institutions constituted by the Constitution. For some reason, the Constitution doesn't serve their view of restoring core American values. And maybe as we go through the taps, I might start tapping into some commentary around those core American conservative values and why they are the opposite of progressive, inclusive, promoting empowerment, and then universal empowerment, which is a more broad-based, inclusive aspiration than serving the interests of a small demographic at the exclusion of the broader 8 billion people on the planet. That tab is addressing one of the fundamental pillars of the Project 2025, which is pretty much to dispense of the professional civil service and the bureaucracy within America in the governance institutions and replace them with hand-picked and loyal Donald loyalists so that the professional civil service will be gutted and it will be replaced by those that are hand-picked loyalists to Donald. And if that doesn't smack you like Nazi Germany, I don't know what does, because that's the way Hitler did things.
So when I hear this about Project 2025, I get engrams of the Khmer Rouge when they were killing all the professionals and instituting children. They would have the children kill their parents, and then they would teach children at a very young age to serve like they wanted to. So those are the engrams that they're drawing from.
Wow.
It is scary.
Jen, do you want to know why the right-wing conservative movement is so hell-bent on gutting the bureaucracy and professional bureaucrats? The underlying reason is that professional bureaucrats, these are people that, whose life and career it is to administer the state and all of the institutions that make the functioning of the collective. These people are actually typically fairly thoughtful people, and they do have a tendency to gravitate towards progressive, inclusive thoughts. And this is an offense to the minority of those that are in the right-wing conservative, ideology. And they hate the bureaucracy because they can't control them, because they are individually thinking professionals who are doing a professional job in a professional capacity. Do you want to provide a little bit of context to that tap? Because that's an interesting tap. All blockages to discovering the frontier of our inner worlds. And so let me just quickly tell you the story behind that tap, because it's quite interesting. So off camera, Jen and I were talking about the underlying first cause of this whole obsession of preserving or reinstating core American values. And as a non-American, I'm trying to understand this because it's just opaque to me. And so the realization that I came to is that there is a small demographic, and it is a small demographic out of the 300 and something million Americans, possibly 400 million Americans. But there is a small demographic within America that is romanticizing the frontier days, the original days of the frontier when some of the original settlers were establishing frontier farms, and they were literally defending the farm against all comers. And I suspect there is an ongoing romanticizing of that kind of frontier mindset. And when you hear things like, and this is the parochial mindset of a certain demographic, not only in America, we have our version in Australia. I'm sure it exists everywhere in the world. But when you hear things like, and I'm going to use a particular Southern kind of American accent, when you hear things like my daddy and his daddy and great daddy and great granddaddy, when you hear things like that, I can guarantee you they are romanticizing that frontier era. And so you said something like, well, that's really stupid. What we need to do is we need to discover the frontier of our inner worlds, not romanticize around the frontier of an old age. And I thought that was pretty clever.
First of all, your accent was hysterical. I loved it. Second of all, I came up with that tab because there's like these debates. I don't do well in these debates. I can't even articulate words anymore because I'm in energy all the time. So I just answered you with a tap to get through the debate. Third of all, if people could tap into the inner joy that I experience every single day, I don't need to do anything. I'm out of here. I'm experiencing having conversations with trees. I can help people on the other side of the world. I can go to them energetically. We are not meant to be trapped in our body like people think. The new frontier is realizing that the body is just a grounding point for the magnificence of your whole beingness. And I think individuals are so angry because on some level they know how expansive they are, but they're pissed that they have to be trapped in the body by their ideology. And so they lash out in judgment and hate because they so desperately want to be as free as we are and exploring the whole universe.
The reason why I emphasized all when I was doing that tap is that the rhetoric around the right-wing conservative agenda is to reinstate and protect individual rights, but only those individual rights that serve the interest of a small demographic, which is these frontier, romanticized, demographic. And so the thing is that we, within the whole universal empowerment agenda being progressive and inclusive, we need all individual rights to be protected and preserved and reinstated, not only those rights that serve the interest of a narrow demographic.
You know why there's such a fear of being woke in MAGA? Because once it's like a guardrail on their whole movement. If people aren't afraid of being woke, then they'll be aware, and then the movement will lose its people.
Well, besides which, wokeness, as much as anyone in the MAGA movement doesn't even understand what that means, but wokeness implies a degree of discernment, which is the complete opposite of what that very narrow demographic that is hell-bent on preserving core American values is trying to inflict on the broader populace. I'd like to throw a challenge out there, if you don't mind, for all those that identify as Republican, or at least on the right side of the aisle in politics, and not just in America, but all over the world. So here's my challenge. Dig deep and see if you can write down the core values that you are seeking to preserve, particularly the conservative values. Write them down and try and articulate what it is about that is so important to you, and why not preserving those is so offensive to you. Write it down. Then jump onto the Declaration of Universal Interdependence Facebook group page and share your thoughts with us so that we can engage in a dialogue, because I'm trying to understand what it is about these core American conservative values that the Heritage Foundation and others are so hell-bent on preserving in such an egregious way to benefit a small demographic at the expense of the broader populace. And let me just quickly try this. If one of your answers is the sanctity of the family, which is a core conservative, American value, then a broad bunch of people would agree that the family is an important institution. But then why do you have to take that to the next extreme level and exclude all other expressions of family, and do the same to all of the other bullet points that you write down? There's my challenge to you. I am going to post onto the Declaration of Universal Interdependence page my summary of the 10 most, as I understand them, 10 most important core conservative values that I think the Heritage Foundation and others that have really extreme conservative leanings are hell-bent on trying to protect. And then what I'm going to do is pick each one of them one at a time and write some commentary about it. And if you are conservative leaning, jump onto the page and share your perspectives, because it's as we tease these things out that I'm hoping a lot of people will realize that a lot of these values that they're so hell-bent on trying to preserve really aren't that worth preserving, particularly when you're inflicting so much pain and suffering onto the broader population who are not served by your intention to try and preserve these things in a very narrow demographic.
So what you're doing, baby, again, you're teaching the masses, 8 billion people, for the most part, how to discern for themselves again. If you're having a reaction to what Marvin says, go on that page and do that, because what he's teaching you is to open those pathways. Now, so I know how this is done, where savvy people know how to poke the pleasure parts of your brain and how to poke the hate parts of your brain. So what Marvin is trying to help you do, and I'm helping in energy, is pull out those little pins, like this is an analogy, pull out those things that are poking your brain that cause you to react to hate and violence. Pull them out so you can have the freedom afforded to you of being awake and being empowered.
So I'll guarantee you that those right-leaning people that are willing to take up the challenge, a certain number of them will jump onto the page and just throw out hate, rhetoric, vitriol, and just spew the usual, narrow-minded bullshit. And that's fine. The important thing about that is that when they do that, what they're really doing is they're exposing their inability to critically think. Because if all you're going to do is repeat the same bullshit mantra that, the Magadonians out there throw out there as if it is truth, but it's not. As soon as you expose any one of these things and shine a light on it and really, start pulling it apart, teasing it apart a little bit, all of a sudden they just crumble into a pile of shit because they've got nothing of substance to stand on. So go ahead, Magadonians, jump onto that website and let us have your understanding and defense of these. I'm going to put down 10 core values as I understand them as a non-American that the MAGA faithful and the Heritage Foundation are hell-bent on preserving, and let's see how we go with that.
If you like this content and you appreciate the work that we're doing to uplift all of humanity and to help heal your body, mind, and soul, please consider becoming a Jenuine Healing premium content subscriber. Simply jump onto the Jenuine Healing website, genuinehealing.com with a J, and click on the purchase button on the top menu. Scroll down, there's a premium content option. Click on that, sign up. It's a simple monthly plan for $20 a month, and you will have access to all of the premium content that we put up on the Jenuine Healing website. We look forward to catching you next time, and bye for now.